because the chat and the social Q&A have been pretty lively. And they've been so lively, of course, that it has been difficult to get to all the questions, but I think that's what the attempt is going to be right now. So not only the social Q&A questions, but also some of the questions that each of you may have at your individual nodes. So in order to keep this open forum moving along quickly, I'm going to turn it over to North American Bureau Director Mark Buell in Ottawa. Mark, it's all yours.
Across the Western Hemisphere for Intercommunity 2016. This morning in North America, we had a great dialogue in our region that touched on a wide variety of internet policy, governance, and technology issues. I'm sure it was the same in the LAC region as well. And to kick this discussion off, I'd really like to hear from our trustees that were involved in those discussions about what they heard in the sessions. Olga, perhaps you could start us off. What did you hear this morning in your session that really stood out for you?
1 second. ¿Pueden hacer un poquito de silencio así hablo? Sorry, I'm telling the crowd to shut up. Yeah, because everyone is talking and eating media lunas. You know what media lunas are? We had two very good sessions. One at national level, but we had participation from remote and the regional one. The one in a local level was how to create more content in Spanish. We have been checking the different platforms like Wikipedia, icomm16, and we saw that the content in Spanish is not that much, in spite of the fact that Spanish is a very widely spoken language. So we did a direct training on some tools like icomm16, how to create content in Spanish, and it was very, very interesting. And then we went through two important topics to internet governance, which are trust in the internet and access to the internet. And I will just make some remarks. The conversation was long and very interesting in between the nodes in Mexico, Barbados, and Buenos Aires. And one thing that was stressed was the fact that encryption is important. Encryption technologies should be understood and capacity building should be built around that. But at the same time, it's not an easy technology to learn. So that would involve some different stakeholders, like different private companies and also universities and training centers. Also, the importance of creating certifications, not necessarily a long career in the university, but a shorter training certification for students that may use that to enter into a different level of work. Other thing that we agreed among us is that Latin America and the Caribbean have lower levels of security in all the systems, whether private or public, which put us in a disadvantaged position. So we have to work on that. So the levels of security should be increased at the regional level. Where should we put our efforts? Mainly in capacity building, in making understanding the value of security and cryptography, and also in making the different stakeholders to understand the problem. Sometimes we see regulations that are not so, they get a lot of criticism, but at the end it's a lack of information that it's at the hand of those that prepare the regulation. So it's an important role, and many spoke about the value of documents that Internet Society develops to have as background information to work on these regulations. And about access, the important thing is that the state should not be in charge of preparing all the infrastructure, and also it should not be also only in the hands of the private sector, because then it becomes an issue of the market. So it is important that different stakeholders are involved with the development of different parts of the total connectivity from the backbone to the end of the user. And let me check my notes. The value of the multi-stakeholder process and dialogues was really enhanced. And I want to share you a very important note, information from Argentina, is that we will have our first IGF, Argentina IGF, at the end of October, 2 days. So we are very happy with that. And also the government of Argentina has opened dialogue spaces about internet and internet governance, which is a very interesting news. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Olga. On the topic of Spanish language content, I think that's an issue that we experience in Canada as well with French content, French language content. Sean Turner in Washington, you were in our North American regional session. Would you like to give us an update on what you heard this morning that really stood out for you?
From the DC one, because I was here. I guess that we started off with kind of talking about the events that the DC chapter gets to hold. And one of the interesting things about being in DC is that there's lots of policies and stuff. There's probably like 20 meetings a month about some internet policy thing. So it's really interesting that the DC chapter basically tries to make sure that they're different and forward-thinking compared to a lot of the other ones. And I think that that's really true. I've been to a number of the events, and they're really interesting. But the thing that I think that actually got the conversation going the most was actually the part that they're most proud of is the fact that the openness of their own chapter organization and leadership. And so they want to make sure that new people can come in and contribute right from the get-go. They don't have to be leaders. They can be anybody basically off the street. And I think that that was really interesting because we got to the point where they want to help new chapters come along. And we had a chapter that was in Vancouver that was looking for advice for how to do something. And basically we got to do kind of some collaboration, kind of like on the spot, on the fly. And I thought that that was really interesting. They've also got this Internet Policy Forum, which is a group where they're trying to kick off having input directly into policy stuff that they've got going. And I'll switch now a little bit to the Canadian chapter, where we had a nice report that's on the consultations that they've done to the government, where they've provided some interesting information on how the internet can help developing nations. They've got some cybersecurity and public safety workshops that they've been working on, and they're doing something that's very similar to what we did in the Internet Society with the Hall of Fame, where they're trying to promote some Canadians that are, were prominent in internet development. And if they need some names, I got a bunch of them. And I think I'm going to hand it off to John now to do the New York City one.
Thanks, Sean. John, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Yeah, thanks, John. I'm actually using the internet here. I was scheduled to be in Ottawa, but for personal reasons, I couldn't go. So here I am at my house in rural New York, where I told people there's chickens in the backyard, but participating with all of these interesting sessions. And the New York group, who I'm sure will speak for themselves in a few minutes. They had a list of interesting events they're working on. They have privacy events, they have cybersecurity events. They have all sorts of stuff available to people who live in New York City, which is, it's a large area, and they are interested in a variety of local policy things. And one of the policy topics they brought up is that the city contracted with the company to put a bunch of video internet kiosks in locations that used to be payphones. And recently, they've been turning a lot of them off, or at least restricting the function. And the alleged reason, which maybe won't be the true reason, is that they're becoming a nuisance because people are hanging around with them and watching pornography. But the question of does this provide an important amount of access to people who are underserved, is an interesting topic that the New York chapter has been talking about, and I'm sure would fill us in more details as well. I was also impressed with the stuff in the Canadian chapter, both the consultations they've done and some of the stuff they're planning to do in the future. The Canada's 150th anniversary of Confederation is coming up next year, and they're working on some events for that. And they're looking at some way to do a Canadian version of the Internet Hall of Fame, which is long overdue since there's been important Canadian work in the internet for a long time. And Canadians being Canadians, they tend to not boast about their accomplishments. I mean, so I found all of that interesting, and I think Sean and I both, since we come from the most technical corner of the Internet Society, we're both appointed by the Internet Architecture Board on behalf of the Internet Engineering Task Force. And we mostly do, network security stuff. So having the access to all of this important sort of both policy stuff and capacity building stuff, has been really interesting for us, and I'm sure interesting for the other people who are listening.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Sean. I'd also like to touch base with the node that's in Barbados. Although they don't have a trustee with them today, they were involved in the LAC discussions this morning. So if we could go to Barbados to get their thoughts on the discussions earlier from the day. Maybe we can't go to Barbados right now.
Hi, this is Barbados.
There we go.
Yes, thank you. We had very good discussions here this morning as well. We focused our discussions around the themes that were presented to trust and access. And it is clear that we have sort of different challenges here in Barbados. We have very good connectivity. There's been significant investment by the private sector in building out robust infrastructure. So we have fiber to the home and gigabit speeds as well available as residential service. And so that is pretty robust. But what I think our emphasis needs to be now on is educating, building awareness on the more beneficial usage of the internet so that we start fostering businesses and entrepreneurship. It is used for delivering education. It is used to enhance the experience within the education sector and things of that nature. So the more beneficial use and awareness of the benefits of connecting to the internet, I think, is where our efforts need to be focused. Again, the same applies to the issue of trust. How can we promote better awareness and implement some very practical solutions and ensure that our providers are complying with global best practices like the implementation of DNSSEC, et cetera. So that was a very useful discussion this morning. We're also looking at the issue of the multi-stakeholder model in many small developing countries. Much of the policy is pushed centrally by government, and nothing much really happens unless government is behind it and supporting it with policy and financial resources, et cetera. So for us, again, we have to look at this stakeholderism and how can we, through, like the Barbados chapter of ISOC, which was very recently established, and other like-minded organizations, how can we come together and push policy in collaboration with the government, but certainly outside of a governmental structure. So we, like I said, we had a very good discussion, and I think it was very productive. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Barbados. I think we could take a question from the social stream right now, and it's really related to access issues. In North America, we experienced some access issues. Latin America, Caribbean region, also had a discussion around access. So there's a question in the Q&A. What can be done at a local level to improve access to the internet in rural or underserved areas? Does anyone want to take that, or can we go straight to, say, Barbados?
Thank you. Again, coming from our discussion, we have very, very good connectivity. And in fact, was it the, what were the stats you provided this morning? ITU? So from the rankings that we actually went through some of the global indicators this morning, and we're ranked very highly within the region in terms of connectivity. As I mentioned, we have fiber to the home. There are very little, we're not aware of any communities that are not connected. And the issue for us is cost. That did come up as an issue. Even though there is access, it is still relatively expensive. And what sort of interventions can be made to address those for whom the cost may be prohibitive or that may be a factor. Competition also, because we have two major players in the market, and perhaps if we can improve the level of competition, that would help to drive costs down. And in parallel to that discussion would be, as I mentioned before, more beneficial use of the internet. So those are from our perspective in the Caribbean, sorry, from Barbados, I should say, because there are, even though we're a group of nations in the Caribbean, we do have different challenges. And I'm aware that for some of the other member states in the Caribbean, that connectivity and access would be a bigger problem than it is in Barbados. Thank you.
Thank you. I think Olga has her hand up. She would like to comment on that question. Olga?
Thank you, Mark. The challenge for countries like Argentina that are extremely large in geography, it's to reach all the different locations, whether they're close to main cities or not. So I think that the role of the government is to build a solid and good backbone where all the other smaller ISPs and companies could use as the connectivity in the whole country. There is a project that was started by the previous government and is kept ongoing with this new one, which is fiber optic developed as a backbone in the whole country, which is quite long. From the north to the south, there are 1,000 kilometers. So this is extremely challenging. And the people that need more connectivity are those that are in the regions that are far away from the populated regions, which is the middle of the country. And then they will offer a flat rate for connectivity. So whichever the place you are in the country, you will, if you're an ISP, you will get a backbone rate to connect to the internet. I think that they are doing it step by step, but that will make a significant change. Also, other part of important of the infrastructure is the build of internet exchange points. This is something that in Latin America is driven mainly by the private sector, and it's lowering the access costs for all the ISPs especially in rural areas and distant areas from the main cities. I wanted to share that with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Olga. And next in the queue, we have Raul. Then we'll go to participant in Washington. Raul?
Hi. Do you hear me?
I can hear you, Raul.
Okay. I don't know. I did hear the question because we are following here in the room the Spanish version that is a little delayed with regard to the English one. So but I assume that the question was about the discussion on globalization 2 on access and development. That's right?
Yes, access.
Okay. We have very good globalization too, with participation from different several nodes from Africa and Europe. The discussion was mainly around access and development. We had a very good keynote speaker that it was Mutani, the Hall of Fame inductees. She is an African leader, very energetic, inspiring leader. We discussed about, it was a very interactive participation from many people from different countries. There were some consensus on some topics like the importance of focus not in the connectivity itself, but in the impact that the connectivity has in the life of the people. And as we saw, areas in which the ICTs and internet can have a huge impact, like education, healthcare, and others. And we discussed about also the work.
I think we've lost Raul there. Raul, can you hear us?
Yes, I'm back. I'm sorry. But just to be brief, we cover different angles of the development and access discussion that's very well aligned with the work that the Internet Society does in different regions. And it was a very productive discussion. I hope that everybody can see later the videos because it was a very rich discussion. Leader by, as I say, an inspiring leader as Dorcas Mutani. So I was very glad to be part of.
Thank you, Raul. I think we have a question from a participant at the Washington, D.C. node.
Mark, this is Sally. I had a question emailed to me that we didn't get to in the last session on internet governance, so I thought I would just raise it here, and I'm going to paraphrase a little bit, but this is from our friend Evan Leibowitz. As I think many of you know, in the discussions around the IANA transition, there's been a lot of language and political arguments that have been made that have sometimes gained some traction. And the question that was posed is, how can we in the Internet Society help non-technical end users, and I would also put in parentheses policymakers, understand these issues in a way that helps them make good decisions? I've wanted to put that on the table of just something that I feel very strongly about. It's part of my job description, but I'd be interested perhaps to hear from some of our other nodes and of ways that you think at the Internet Society we can do that collectively and help each other do that well in our local environment.
Excellent, thank you, Sally.
I'll say something about that, which is show them that Vint Cerf video that Google put out, which is the best single thing that's there.
Totally right, Sally, and it's making the rounds on Twitter, so it's definitely a good.
Can I say something on this too, because it's one of my pet peeves. I believe we have to explain these things the way you would tell your dad, who knows nothing about them, or your mom, who knows nothing about how the internet works, not at all, has no idea how an email gets from you to you at any particular day. And it's been one of my sort of rules in policy development and advocacy to try to talk to your mom or your dad. And I look at the person and assume it's your father, your mother. Some of you can't go to your father. I know you can't, but, and say, this is how it works. And I think we miss the boat sometimes. I think that we are so technically able and understand so well how this all works that we assume someone actually cares, which they actually don't. All they want to know is it works. And then when someone tells them that somebody's going to ruin it for them, or they're going to use this for some horrible reason, they have no reason not to believe that because they don't know how it works. So what I believe the Internet Society can do in its local and regional efforts is to explain things in simple language. Whatever your language is, speak to your relatives, speak to somebody who hasn't a clue what you do all day, and try to explain what it is you do, why it's important, and why it works the way it does. So I just feel like, having gone through this last couple of weeks, we now are talking to people who have been elected officials by mass amounts of people who honestly don't know how it works. And that means we start out in a hole on what the policy implications are of any particular claim that's made about what could happen. So I think together this is something we might think about.
It reminds me of when I realized how I understood how the DNS works when I was able to explain it to my 8-year-old son, and he understood. We have a comment from Alejandro in Mexico. Alejandro?
Hi, thank you. This will be delivered by Alexandra, who's one of the students and youth IGF participants present here at the university in Mexico.
Well, hi to everyone. I wanted to address some of the comments that were left in the chat of this forum. It was by Kanumuri Raju. I'm not sure that it's pronounced correctly. I'm sorry if I didn't. And he was talking about serving social causes and development, no cyber wars. And well, I'm a student here at the Universidad Iberoamericana. So regarding some of the things Kathy Brown just said about speaking things as they are plainly, explaining what are we doing, why are the things we're doing important, like no more sweet talk, you know, just going direct to what we are doing. Larry, in his speech regarding all of this multi-stakeholderism, talked about compromise. Compromise, I think it was about people in government and people in private sector, but what are we really compromising here? I mean, I talk about, commitments and things for people who are not directly linked to ISOC or any governmental processes we're dealing with here. So I would like to know more about that to understand what is happening. So.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mexico. Do we have any comments from trustees or any of the nodes?
Mark, I think we have a question here in Washington, D.C., or a comment.
Thank you. It's a comment going back to what Kathy was saying regarding educating policymakers who are non-technical. I think in addition to even dissecting how an email gets sent, unfortunately, we take our access for granted compared to the rest of the world. So explaining that, I think, is also important. I spoke to a group of students a few months ago about the digital divide, and I took 2 stacks of cards, one letter A, one letter B. 2/3 of them were the letter B, and handed them out to the students and had them separate in groups. I put up 3 slides that had medical symptoms in them and asked the people to tell me what the disease was, and the side that had access to their cell phones was able to pull up that information compared to the side that didn't. So I was trying to give them a visual representation and understanding of the impact and the real world that we live in, the number of people who don't have access today. So I think that's important, especially for policymakers to understand.
Thank you, Washington. And thank you to our trustees and all of our nodes for this fascinating discussion. I'd like to turn the mic back over to Kathy, who would like to make some comments.
Oh, thanks. I just wanted to weigh in on Evan's question and Kathy's response to it. We certainly need to educate policy makers and educate people who are not tech literate as to how the internet works. But what I see is a whole bunch of other communities. It harps back to what Sally said at the very beginning, that internet governance isn't just one thing, and we cover a lot of different issues. I see a whole lot of different communities out there that I deal with regularly that have a dog in this race that have no idea what's going on. I'm talking about programmers, I'm talking about designers, I'm talking about web hosting people. I think we need to continue, and I think the chapters at their best need to continue to engage communities on a variety of issues to do the community building that will make people more staked in conversations about the future of the internet as a whole.
Thank you, David. I want to thank everyone who has spent the day talking to each other, listening to each other, trying to identify things we can do, how we can do more to advance the thing we're here for, and that is a globally connected, open, secure internet for everyone. If we keep our eye on that ball and we keep thinking about how to get that done, we always come back to this idea of a collaborative approach. We've seen time and time again where silver bullet, some sort of legislation is supposedly going to solve some problem, when in fact we're in a dynamic situation with a dynamic technology that changes all the time, and a human ecosystem that itself changes the ecosystem, the way it uses the technology. It's very complex, and complex ecosystems need a different kind of decision-making process, and we're the ones who are advancing that. So we got to stay with that. I want to shift just for a moment to talk a little bit about some other news and what else is going on. So I pause from the present to the active conversation to the fact that next year the Internet Society will be 25 years old. So an amazing kind of thing for some of us who have been around that long and think, oh no, but really 25 years is a milestone anniversary. And I think it's time to celebrate our work and our achievements and our community. So as we go into this, what I consider a well-timed opportunity, we're going to try to use next year to up our influence in the world and try to figure out how to do that in various ways. One way we see is in this policy realm. Another is explaining technology. And others are, as we said, ensuring that this is a safe internet. And we have lots of plans on the table that do that. We worked hard over the last 2 years to strengthen our community, our chapters, our membership, our staff, our focus, all of us. I get a sense that we're strong. We were strong before and we're stronger still. We've also gone and tried to sort of brighten up and modernize some of the way we appear, our identity. And so you have our new logo, which is not all that different from the old logo, but which has a different feel to it. And we're introducing colors and ways of doing things that perhaps look a little different than before, but trying to sort of modernize our look. You're going to see more of that. I hope that folks in the DC area might have seen our banner ads that went out this week with a hashtag, now see we're modern, with a hashtag that says yes to IANA, and a message to the Congress that America keeps its promise. A very pointed notion that America keeps its promise, or ought to. And I think this kind of identity, this kind of presence is a good thing for the Internet Society, and I would like to see that happen around the world. So as we continue this journey, it also seems incumbent upon us to think about the future of the Internet. And you know that earlier this year, we launched a project that will stretch our thinking about where and how this Internet is going to evolve in the future. We did 2 surveys, which many of you filled out, on the future of the Internet. We had interviews, roundtable discussions, and we received over 1,100 responses from you on what we believe is going to happen going forward, what you believe is going to happen going forward. What we found was there was many expressed optimism, but there was also a little bit of a disconcerting notion of concern, expression of things that are worrisome in people's minds, including government control, internet fragmentation, the impact of artificial intelligence. What about this Internet of Things, the digital divide, and this growing security threat? That's a lot for us to think about as a global organization, and about how we can focus on what piece of that as we go forward. But first, we thought it was important to perhaps paint a picture of alternative realities, if you will, of how things could go one way or the other. And so by the end of the year, you will see that we will have a report on 4 alternative scenarios that perhaps we then could grapple with and see if we can't start to think about the choices we would like to make on the Internet. So a lot happening there. Next year also, we will have We'll host our next Internet Hall of Fame, which we haven't had now in 2 years. As you know, this is a recognition program that honors the outstanding achievements that have contributed to the global development of the Internet. It was launched in 2012. There are 89 inductees of our finest members. And we've been working closely with those inductees to have another ceremony to bring folks into the Hall of Fame. And that will be part of a 25th anniversary celebration next year. I hope at our intercommunity. I hope we'll be able to combine things for a celebration that we would all enjoy. And I'm looking forward to getting your input on all of that. The Internet Society has come a long way since inception. But as you know, our core philosophy and our values and our mission and our passion remains. So I had a nice chat with Vint a week ago or so, and I said, so Vint, would you do a little film for us about us being 25 years old? And he said, yeah. And so I did no prompting beyond saying that, and you'll see, here's the video from Vint to you.
To the internet than otherwise? Will their local languages be supported? Will businesses be able to get online and make use of the internet not only domestically, but globally to make their presence, their products and services known? Now, we have some really tough problems ahead of us, especially with regard to the Internet of Things. How will we manage them? How will that scale? How do we make them safe? How do we make it secure? How do we make it reliable? How do we make sure that the systems can be updated, especially if these are devices that are going to be around the house or in the office or on the manufacturing floor for years to decades to come? How do we make sure that the updated software comes from a reliable and legitimate source? So you at the Internet Society have an opportunity to fashion a program that looks forward for 2.5 decades. What can you do? Not only what can you say, but what can you do that leads to a positive outcome for the Internet in the future? So I thank you for your commitment to the Internet Society and to the Internet, and I hope I'll be able to play a small part in helping take us into that next 25-year destination. Thanks, and see you on the net. Hello, my name is Vint Cerf. I was the first president of the Internet Society, and I'm still a longtime member. I thought I'd take a little bit of time to talk to you about what I think the next 25 years may bring with regard not only to the Internet Society, but to the Internet and the society that it supports in general. The first thing to observe, of course, is that the last 25 years have been nothing short of spectacular, from a few 100,000 users to several billion users in that period of time. I think we can reasonably anticipate that by 2020, perhaps 70% of the world's population may be online. We have been, I think, for the last 25 years, a fundamental advocate for the spread and open access and neutrality of the Internet. In addition to that, the Internet Society has housed the Internet Research Task Force, the Internet Engineering Task Force, the Internet Architecture Board, and it has become a very cogent and very creditable voice on Internet policy over the past couple of decades. But now the time has come to go from advocacy to action. So what is important is thinking our way through the next billion or 2 or 3 billion users. How will they get access to the network? Will it be useful for them? Will there be local content that lends more utility?
It always makes me smile to listen to Vint because it brings you right back to what we're all about. Well, we're going to wrap up now, and I first want to see if any of our trustees would want to make any sort of closing remarks. Sean, since you're right here.
I guess I'll go first because I'm here. I think this is really great. I think, again, like I said earlier in the TC note, is the really great thing about the Internet Society is the chapters and the fact that we essentially can be this great force multiplier if we can get our voices going together in one unison. And that's kind of what I'm hoping for. And I'm really excited to see this continue. I can't wait to do it next year. We did the first time last year. I think this time was even more interesting that we were spread around so that the board members are in different places to kind of show that we're accessible and not too scary. But I think this is really great, and I can't wait to do it next year.
Thank you, Sean. Olga, see if I see you. Can I see you? Do we have you, Olga, in Argentina?
Hello.
Here you are.
Can you hear me? I cannot hear you, so I lost sound. Can you hear me, or just a sign that you can hear me?
No. Okay.
Yes, we hear you.
All right.
Thank you. Thank you. Just what I would like to say, apart from the fact that it has been a fantastic new experience, we organized several events in the chapter, but this was different and challenging and very interactive. We, as a concrete conclusion, we shared a lot of new ideas about how to enhance local content, new tools for translation, new tools for accessibility, new tools for usability. So in the concrete thing, we have a lot of new knowledge to share and a lot of new friends. And thank you all of you for thinking about this space and for participating and for being with us. Hello from the south of the Latin America. Thank you.
Thank you, Olga. And then I think John, sitting with his chickens, wherever you are, John.
Hi there.
There you are.
Yeah, I think I'm mostly just going to echo what Sean said. One of the great strengths of the Internet Society is that we bring people with interest in the Internet of different kinds together. Today we mostly heard about what I would call capacity building and policy. But that's good because I think that's what the majority of the people are interested in. And I was really interested to hear about that. I think to some degree it informs the technical stuff that we do. And I hope the technical stuff we do informs stuff the other way. So I second the comment that this was really interesting. I agree it was better than last year. I think that the topics we talked about this year were a lot more substantive, and I look forward to doing it again next year.
Super. So I'd like to generally thank our board of trustees who actually spent the day and traveled to do this all over the world. And I'm very, very pleased. I want to thank our three very good speakers. June Marai this morning did talk about the security issues and had a fabulous conversation with Olaf and others in the Asia segment. Dorcas Bethune was amazing, as I think Raul handed out, and I thought it was special to have Larry today. I think he's sweating that thing up on the hill, and I really was very pleased that he was able to come and talk to us. I want to thank our staff, and particularly the people you don't see who are running this technology. We're trying to get better and better and better at it. I think we will get better at it, and we need the chapters to get better at it. We all have to get better at it, and then we're going to be able to use this this amazing thing called the internet to do a lot of things: connect, collaborate, and really make a difference in the world. So with that, I again thank you all here, all of you in the notes. I'm going to go back to Ted for a moment, and he's going to run the credits. So thank you so much, and over to you, Ted.
Wow. I want to thank everybody for your great participation in the third and final session of Intercommunity 2016. I'm continuing to be astounded by the thoughtfulness, the dynamism of this great group of people. And I hope that we'll continue this in so many facets of our work. I want you all to know that the questions that we didn't get onto in that beautifully lively chat will be posted in the open forum on Connect. We will be setting up the recordings of these sessions so people will be able to refer to it. And those of you who weren't able to see the original sessions, the first two sessions, and the different topics that were discussed there, will have the chance to see them there as well. And on a final note, what we'll be doing is sending around a survey to everybody so that you can help us improve intercommunity for next year and the future years. So once again, thank one and all for your participation.